Welcome to All Villa, No Filler. Remember to subscribe to the podcast, follow us on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. This is Rivalries, the show where we meet fans from rival clubs. Villa are due to play Tottenham this weekend. To chat about that, I'm joined by Spurs season ticket holder Ollie Leach, a man I once hosted a sports radio show with many years ago at Sheffield University. At the time, Villa and Spurs hadn't won anything for years, and now not much has changed. Anyway, Ollie, welcome to All Villa, No Filler.
20 years. It was 20 years ago,
Yeah.
I think. But I'd like to say I launched your broadcast career, Frankie, and
Yeah.
frankly, you've done better than me, so well done.
I don't know about that,
Yeah, good times. It was basically a load of students just shooting the breeze about sport, wasn't it?
yeah.
What's not to love.
Oh, it was great. Back at the time, I think Villa were managed by Martin O'Neill. No, just before the
O'Leary, I
O'Leary.
think.
Yeah, I think it was O'Leary
You get
moving
going on
into
about OB out before Easter,
yeah.
and I think we had the sort of glorious Martin Yole era.
Yes.
Which is funny at the time because where Spurs have kind of come from, it seemed like the dawn of a new era.
Hmm.
Now we're sort of accustomed to realizing that's probably never going to happen. So it sort of goes like that, Spurs life. But
Yeah.
no, I remember saying to you one year, I thought Villa were going to do it. I thought they were going to go all the way.
Mm.
Since then, is it one trophy between us?
Yeah. I think it's your Carabao Cup win of 2008.
Yeah, the day
That's the
he.
one.
That's how I remember it.
Yeah.
Really, but there we go.
But also, look, I'm going to mention it, and I've mentioned it a lot on this podcast. I look at Tottenham and Atletico Madrid as the profile of club that Aston Villa should be looking at. They broke through. Many years ago, people laughed at Tottenham back in the day as a club that you'd ever think could be in a Champions League final, and they did it. So regularly top four. So that's what Villa have to look at, and that's what we have to compete with, and we will be competing this weekend at Tottenham. So, Ollie, Spurs go into this having had a great start to the season, but you have just had your first two defeats, and you've also had a glut of very unfortunate injuries. How do you feel going into this weekend's game?
I think, look, I mean, yeah, start of the season was great. It was enjoyable. There were goals. There was attacking football, which, after the last few years we've had, godsend. But I've said to everyone, I've had all my mates come up to me, friends, fans from other clubs, oh, Spurs doing well, aren't they? And I've said the same thing. Come back to me at Christmas. Ask me that question at Christmas. There's just been too many false dawns. But I think, it's an interesting time for Villa to come. I mean, that Chelsea game we had, the first 15 minutes was majestic. We were cruising. And then I've never seen a team get whacked so hard in my entire life in one. Yeah, I mean, everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. Romero lost his head. Udoji, who frankly is fantastic footballer, he lost control, and then VAR, I'm pretty sure, contributed to Van der Ven pulling up, which we can talk about in a bit. But yeah, no. So I think, look, I mean, we're sort of confident, but with a pinch of salt. I'm nervous about the pace that Villa have got up front. I'm nervous about it against our high line and our not too terribly quick defenders. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting game, but I'm confident, but I'm also nervous.
I love that you mentioned the Highline Derby, I've been calling it. I think that the heat map in this game will literally just be the halfway line because both clubs love to play that very high line. It's very proactive, very ambitious, and both clubs have been doing a great job with it so far this season, really. But Spurs, I'll list some of the players that are missing. Obviously, James Maddison, massive miss, and Van der Ven, who I think is a fantastic defender. Basuma, who's been playing very, very well this season. Richarlison and Romero as well in defence. So those are some big, big names, and there's not many clubs in the world, no matter Man City themselves missing big figures, would cope too well. So it is a big test for Spurs. But I'm quite intrigued to know, who do you think will start in centre midfield for you this weekend?
Well, look, last week it was Højbjerg, Sarr, who I think has got a massive future, and Basuma. Basuma's obviously is out.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be surprised if we see Ollie skip, who
Yeah,
I mean, look, if just put aside your question for a second, if at some point no one is doing a nice one skip meme with an Australian manager, a PR opportunity has been missed. I think we'll see him because I think generally he's one of those guys who managers like to turn to when things are a bit tough. He's one of those guys who will just chuck himself about and fully go at it. It's a weird thing, Spurs midfield. Like we all hope Bentancur's back. He's a fantastic player. Yeah, I mean, but I'm just every time he goes in the tackle, I'm just when a player's had a cruciate, I'm sure you guys are the same with Zaniolo. You just wonder every time, is that going to be the one that does the cruciate again? And you're always going to have that with someone who's done a cruciate. But the real enigma for Spurs, for me anyway, I don't know if I speak for all Spurs fans, but Giovanni Lo Celso came at a time when Spurs team was kind of it needed sort of a complete refurb. We just lost the Champions League final, and all the players were a bit down. And he comes in to be like the sort of renaissance of the midfield with Tanguy and Ndombele. And Lo Celso had bad luck. He had injuries, and then the team wasn't great that he was coming into. So he really couldn't earn himself into the team. And I'd love to see him be a success at Spurs because, everywhere else he's been, they've built teams around him. Your man Emery, at Villarreal, built a team around him, did really well. Betis, when we signed him from him, they built a midfield around him. Argentina think he's the best midfielder in the world. The Argentine fans were gutted when he didn't make the World Cup. He'd be a World Cup winner. I doubt we would have heard of old Enzo Fernandez if Lo Celso had been fit. That's how highly they rate him. Yet for some reason, in a Spurs shirt, it just doesn't happen. And I really can't work out why. But, you'd love to think that with all these injuries, with a similar kind of player like Maddison, Crocs, this is his opportunity. But he didn't pick him last week. But, now we're down another midfielder. Maybe it will happen. But it's one of those weird things that goes on at Spurs. We sign these players who are amazing elsewhere, and then suddenly, I'm sure it's true everywhere else, but it always kind of feels personal, doesn't it, when it happens to your club?
Yeah, you're right about Lo Celso. Yeah, he played very, very well under the man I call Professor Unai at Villarreal. And I do think that Spurs are going to need some creative input, in the centre there, because Villa have a lot of it and a lot of fits. All I said, playing midfielders really are fit now. Jacob Ramsey's on his way back. But to be honest, when I looked at this fixture a few weeks ago, I just couldn't sleep at night because I kept thinking about what James Maddison might do to Villa, coming deep and playing those balls through to Son. I think he was the exact perfect player to play against the high line. Brilliant player, but yeah, big miss. I think you're just hoping Lo Celso steps up and does something really in his stead.
It's a great time for you guys to play us, to be honest, just because, I don't think I'm necessarily a massive pessimistic Spurs fans, because there are a lot of us, but I watched you guys the other week, and I thought the whole link up, particularly between Pau Torres and Dina, I saw him play the same ball about 3 times, where he just played it, between the right back and the centre back, and Dina was just there. It was a perfectly weighted ball, and I just think, if that can happen deeper in the pitch with Dyer, who, look, I don't think he needs as much stick as Spurs fans give him. I think he's sort of a symbol of kind of frustrating times. And Ben Davies, again, he'll give his all. Both players will give them all, but they're just not the best. Against those two guys, the amount of pace that Villa have got up front, Leon Bailey's just going to gas it through, I think. So, I'm nervous in defence. I'm sort of quietly optimistic in attack, but I think it's going to be goals, certainly.
Yeah, and Van der Ven's missing. Van der Ven. So I've watched him a few times this season, and I have to be honest with you, I think he looks like a player who could one day be in the conversation for the best defence centre back in the world. Just watching the attributes he has and the speed, reading of the game. I think the reason the high line works so well at Spurs this season is partly because he's there, with Romero as well, a top quality defender. But there's just something about having a player of his pace to sort of recover, if someone does get in behind. If he continues on the trajectory I've seen this season, it's only a small sample size I've seen. But if he continues on that, he's what a player Spurs have. But he is missing. So Do you think it'll be Dia and Ben Davies in central defence this weekend?
Yeah, I do. I think there's a lot of hope among Spurs fans about this young chap called Ash Phillips, who he signed in the summer from Blackburn Rovers. 18 years old. You can't chuck him in against, well, maybe you can. I don't know. But I mean, Ange's throwing surprises in here, there, and everywhere. So, but what you do get with every manager who's ever managed Ben Davies loves him. So they feel like they can trust him. You know, he puts in a shift. He's not the biggest guy in the world, but the Welsh play him in that sort of left centre back position. He plays left centre back occasionally for Spurs. He does a job. He puts his body on the line. When you're in an injury crisis, you know you got to kind of make do. But there's no real replacing Van der Ven with that high line. It's like he offers what Kyle Walker offers for England. It's that kind of they've broken quick. We need the guy with speed to get back and hold them up. And he does it. You're right. He does it so well. He stays on his feet. He doesn't put his socks above his knees, which winds me up. It's like he looks like sort of your classic sort of 70s Dutch centre midfielder who quite happily will sort of swap positions with Johan Cruyff. So yeah, no, but he's been a great signing. And Romero, he's a big miss. I mean, when he's got his head switched on, there's no one better. He reminds me of sort of a right-footed Walter Samuel. Remember, Dynamite signing on Champ Manager.
Yeah, he's a big miss. They're two very big misses, Romero particularly and Van der Ven. But when they both went off the pitch a couple of weeks ago against Chelsea, Spurs continued with the high line with 9 men, which was turned into one of the most amazing games of football I've ever seen, ever, genuinely. Do you think, with the profile of defender you'll have this weekend, do you think Ange might be tempted to drop the defence a little bit deeper, or do you think he's going to stick with that philosophy of we are the attacking team and we're going to keep the defence right up by the halfway line?
I think he's sticking with it. That's his. And he's sort of a lot of interviews at the moment where it's he's quite adamant that we're not going to win anything this season, which won't come as a shock to most Spurs fans. It's not exactly like a great revelation. That's like, really, Ange? Okay, fair enough. He sees it as a process. So actually, he doesn't mind losing at the moment, which is interesting. He doesn't mind losing as long as there's this thing that he has. I can't quite get my head around it. It's this sort of thing where we're going to do it, we're going to stick to it, and if we lose, we still learn from it. Mm-hmm. I don't quite get that personally because, sometimes you need to adapt. But against Chelsea, he went for it and he said it was as valuable as winning. He said 9 men, don't care, we're going for it. And to be fair to him, we very nearly got something from that game. We were an inch here, an inch there from stealing it late on. Yeah, you can say it's 4-1. Yeah, in the end, the scoreline says we got battered. Fair enough. But 88th minute, Son has a go. Eric Dyer scores a worldie, only to be offside. He'll stick with it. He will. He believes in it. Ultimately, his message to the team is, I think I read somewhere, he says to the team, you didn't get into this game to play like statues and stand in position. You got into this game to have fun and express yourself. And I'm here to score goals. You can't win unless you score goals. So get up there. You want to be near the goal. There's a fascinating thing. I'm sure there's no reason why people listening, watching to this would have necessarily seen it, because there's a thing about Villa, and why would you spend time watching someone else's manager? But Rio Ferdinand did a kind of breakdown thing with Ange in front of the big screen, and he just went through everything, and it's just really interesting to sort of say what he drums home to those forwards. We push up because if you win the ball up there, it's one pass, and the centre backs to the other team will be split. And it really sort of makes sense. He hammers it home, this kind of ethos of if we're near the goal, we can score. We can score quickly. I don't think it's particularly a revelatory sort of thought in football, but it's his ethos. He will stick to it. If he's doing it with 9 men, he's going to do it with 11 men.
Yeah, he's been a bit of I wouldn't say it's a revelation. I mean, this time last year when Villa got rid of Stevie G, not missed Stevie G. And before we were linked with Unai Emery, I actually tweeted I wanted Ange at Villa from Celtic just because you just got a vibe off him. There was something, and I saw Celtic play a few times. I thought they played very well, and thought take a chance on him. And then when we got Professor Unai, I was delighted because I just never believed we'd get him in. So, But to see Ange doing so well at Spurs is he seems like a, if you look back on Spurs' history and you think, the type of managers who've done well there, I feel like it's not necessarily the big names like a Mourinho or a Conte. It's the kind of sort of slightly left field choices like Pochettino was at the time from Southampton, taking a chance on an Ange, and maybe he'll fill that. But as well, who do you identify this weekend as Aston Villa's key threats, and where do you see Spurs potentially being a bit weaker?
I mean, it is at the back where we are weaker. There's no hiding it. I mean, you rattled off our injuries list, and it's two defenders who I would say arguably are among the best in the league, certainly at the moment, are now just out of it. And you guys do have pace. I think Leon Bailey's just can break every back line, can't he? Zaniolo is a great technician. Ollie Watkins on his day is just class Premier League forward,
Yeah.
You guys, I think Villa worry me because I think they're actually doing things properly. In the same way, Newcastle worry me because not because they're doing things properly, they're doing things, but they're doing things, and so it's just one of those things where there's a sort of shifting of the tides in the Premier League, isn't there? It's no one really knows what the next 10 years are going to look like, but I think Villa actually have been a bit of a wake-up call to the upper echelons at Spurs, because we were sleepwalking. The last 3 years we've been sleepwalking. There's not been a plan. No one's really had any faith that we know where we're going. And then all of a sudden, this season, it's sort of Levy's got lucky, I mean, I still have 20 quid on us to go down this season. That's how miserable I was in May. I saw Conte had gone after Mourinho. The Italian chap, Paratici, our director of football, had got suspended, although apparently he's still working in the wings. I think the Dutch fella at Feyenoord had turned us down. I can't remember his name. But, he was again. I just thought, where's this going? I saw Leicester and I thought, that's a great team. They've got, great's probably a bit over-egging it, but, they're good players. Matters, your man, Tielemans, good players, Vardy, and they can still go down. And they actually had sort of a bit of a plan. But no, I think Villa have just, they've bought wisely. They've got a blueprint, it feels like. I think we nicked your technical director there, haven't we? I don't know if you're happy about that or not. I don't know. I don't really know what to expect from a data man, really. But no, I think Villa will be one of those teams who basically are going to upset that sort of top 6, top 4 with Newcastle, and teams like Tottenham in particular. They need to sort of really be on their game with how they structure going forward, because it's sort of very sort of unsettled time in the Premier League, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. You just kind of want to know why and how clubs are doing it. And I think the Villa way is not one which of what's going on in the Premier League is going to upset people if they do well. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see. But I think this will be a really interesting game, seeing where that trajectory is going, really.
Yeah, it is fascinating in that sense for sure. And to be honest, this summer it felt like a lot was very negative at Spurs. I remember speaking to yourself and other Spurs fans, and the general vibe was very, very low. And as a Villa fan, I couldn't help but think, is there an opportunity there to jump over a club that's been, more established in the top 4, 5, 6 in the last 10 years? But you've really fired back. And, I think this season, the top 8 in the Premier League, you could interchange a lot of those clubs. And if any of them finished in the top 4, you'd be thinking, I can see that happening. It's one of the strongest top 8s, or most competitive top 8s I've seen in quite a long time, I think. But with regards to the game this weekend, I look at the player I identify as a potential threat, and I think this because of a game we played against Liverpool last season, John McGinn. So McGinn is on his day, the last game we played against Fulham, 1-3-1, he was 10 out of 10. Fantastic. He was 10 out of 10 when we beat Everton 4-0 earlier this season. Sometimes he can be, a bit, some games he's not brilliant, but he's not always 10 out of 10. But I think the reason I see him as quite crucial is because I think if we can win the battle in centre midfield and take control, Douglas Luiz, Boubacar Kamara, John McGinn, McGinn can do the hassling and the pressing. If we can somehow find the passing channels between Luiz and Kamara to McGinn, or we can find a pass from Pau Torres into McGinn. If McGinn, if you're playing the high line, and we'll be playing it as well, then I think if McGinn can just turn on his left foot, and if Ollie Watkins is on the other side of the pitch and times his run right, gets in behind him, McGinn curved ball over the top. He's done it before against Liverpool last season, through ball to Watkins where he beat the high line, and we won a penalty from it. Did it to Liverpool as well a few years ago, and Jack Grealish scored against him in the 7-2. So I think when we've played teams who have high lines, that whipped ball from McGinn has tended to be a bit of quite an asset. So I think if Spurs can't get to grips with that and stop that from happening, that could be a source of problems for them, particularly with Watkins' pace in behind, and then Diaby as well with his pace. So I think that to me is where I think Villa might, if we can control the centre, there might be some serious problems for Spurs. But at the same time, I still think that you can really hurt us. You know, you got Son's a fantastic player. It just seems like he always scores against Villa. You know, who else do you think can hurt Villa?
On his day, right, Dejan Kulusevski,
Yeah,
is brilliant.
I like him a lot.
They're missing. There are days where you just think he's not quite that. I think you should be slightly grateful Bissouma's not around, because I mean he's so crucial to Ange's style of play. It's not necessarily about passing out the back; it's about dribbling out the back, and he's so good at it. So I mean that's a big kind of let up for you guys. And I think, you know, your point about John McGinn, he won't have Bissouma hassling him. He will have Pat Sarr. Pat Sarr, young lad, insanely athletic, and just like he will run and he will run and he will run, and people hate playing against him because he just does not let up. So I think, you know, your point about McGinn's an interesting one, but I think he's going to have someone breathing down his neck.
Right.
All the time, because, you know, Ange's a shrewd guy. He'll have spotted that weakness. It doesn't mean it won't happen. I'm not going to sit here and tee myself up to start eating my words. I think he's back. He might be having a knock, but Destiny Dodgy. I think he's Doggy actually. But he, I'm fairly sure he's going to be the next player we sell to Real Madrid. I think he's that good. He's 20 years old. He plays like he's 30 years old. And you're thinking, well, why is he bringing up a defender as someone who's dangerous? That's Ange ball. You know, he just pops up in all the right places, all the right time. He's big. He's massive. He's quick. He's technically really good. I really rate him. I think he's on his day. He's pretty dangerous. So yeah, and Pedro Porro, he's kind of gone a bit under the radar because he sort of was a mid-season, last season signing, which we needed because, you know, the whole wing-back thing was just not working. Again, the wing-backs are crucial for Ange because they basically play as midfielders, and occasionally they play as number 8. So they just turn up in the box and have a go. So I think, you know, those guys are key, but obviously, you know, ultimately, if Son's on his game, you guys Villa are going to have problems, which is true of any, because he's just that good.
Yeah, I mean he's just come alive again this season, particularly with Maddison as well, working with him, just phenomenal player. But I think with Villa, the problem with us this season is whilst we've won every game at home, away from home we've been absolutely battered at Newcastle. I think there were various extenuating circumstances for that. You know, with the injuries we got to Mings and Buendia in close succession, and then it just all went a bit wrong first day of the season. But the team that absolutely killed us away was Liverpool. The way they structured their press, very high press against Villa, didn't let us play out, cut off all our passing channels, and physically won it in the middle. They won 3-0, battered us, and that's the one game this season I've come away and going, I just lost to a better team there. But what Villa have been doing, we did this to Forest where we lost 2-0 recently, and we did it at Lechia Warsaw as well. All 4 of the away losses we've had this season, we've conceded very, very early in the game. So I think it's when Villa don't get into because Villa likes control games, basically. We're a possession-based team, and we like to have control and some calmness. But in those first 15 minutes, when the opposition has they're at their most physically active, they're most energetic, the crowd is at their loudest. That's when you can unsettle Villa. So I think if Spurs can get going very quickly this weekend, and if they get an early goal, it's a repeat of a problem we've had a few times this season, where we then have to try and fight our way back into it. And it's a test for us as to whether we can, because we haven't yet done that away from home this season when we've conceded early. So as I say, if Spurs get that early goal, you can probably go down to the bar, get a beer, and start celebrating.
Well, I mean, we scored after 5 minutes against Chelsea, and then big capitulation in Premier League history occurred. So we'll see. But it's interesting what you're saying about sort of the press. Actually, I think that's kind of the slight difference that Ange is working on. I'm not sure it's there yet, but it is that element of, it's not just about passing around the players and having the channels. It's actually pushing and pulling them by dribbling around them a bit as well. I mean, it's all going to go, I'm sure at some point it'll go completely. The wheels will come off the bus and we'll concede 3 because someone couldn't quite dribble away from, so he can gas it quite quickly. But yeah, it's fun. It's fun to watch,
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, I mean, with Unai Emery in the last year, it's been an absolute revelation for Villa fans. I don't think I've ever seen football this good ever at Aston Villa in my lifetime, at least. With Ange, it's going to be a fascinating tactical battle, and I think neutrals could very well end up enjoying this game. But what have you made of Ange Ball?
Do you know what? You're right. I'm a season ticket holder, and I went to the last day for renewal. I'm putting bets against the club, and I'm going to the last day of renewal. That's how bad it was. But the reason it was bad, right? This goes back to what I was saying earlier. I think clubs at the moment, like Villa and Spurs, we're not expecting to necessarily win trophies. We like to win trophies, and we want teams to go out and try and win trophies. But day to day, match to match, what you want is more fundamental than that. You want to be entertained. Premier League fans spend an unbelievable large amount of money. My season ticket is one of the cheaper ones, and I spend just shy of £1,000. Okay, and I'm up in the nosebleeds in this new swanky stadium that we were sort of told would change everything. Okay, maybe things have changed a bit, but the point is I'm spending a lot of money, and for the last season, 2 seasons, it's just been, you almost whip out the program because it's just been really sort of uneventful dross. And I can deal with losing. I'm a grown-up. It takes a lot to make me cry. I can deal with losing, but I can't abide this sort of incredibly kind of statuesque thing that Conte had going on, being a tactical genius. The counter press that Jose had, it was just, oh God, you just felt absolutely exhausted by the end of it. You've just kind of thought, what's the point? And bear in mind, this is Tottenham, okay? And Tottenham is not the easiest part of London to get to. It takes a long time to get there. Fans who've been to the ground will know that in order to get there, you either have to walk sort of half an hour from Seven Sisters up to the ground, or you have to sort of cram yourself on a train, and it's just an absolute nightmare to get to. So you kind of feel like when you're there, you've earned a bit of entertainment. Ange has bought that. He's basically bought in, we're winning and it helps, but actually the amount of chances we're creating, the amount of passes we're putting together, the amount of actual kind of sprinting and energy, the players are playing like they actually want to be there, like they want to compete, like they want to sort of, show us something. And that, I said this after like match day 4. I just said, Conte almost needs recognition for making Yves Bissouma look that average.
Yeah.
I don't know how he managed to make a player that good look that average, but he did. And yeah, so look, I mean, Daniel Levy, one thing he has got right rather recently is, there was this forum thing where he said, we've got our Tottenham back. Okay, it's a slightly wishy-washy way of putting it, but I kind of agree. I'm enjoying watching the games. I enjoy how Ange conducts himself. Again, it goes back to what we've endured since Poch left. Also, Poch was kind of guilty of this, but the endless talking in riddles, the endless sort of, what does he mean by that? He said this, what does he mean? We can read it like this, we can read it like that. Well, so-and-so from the Mirror says this, so-and-so from the Mail says he means this. Ange is like, no, this is it. This is the way it is. I see it like this. It's just so refreshing because it was exhausting. You could probably tell. I was just like exhausted by the whole thing. Whereas now, I get in the car, I look forward to going and watching my club. And I feel like the chap who I sit next to at Spurs, we're actually saying, we should probably get a nicer seat next season, shouldn't we? Because it's actually enjoyable for a change. So yeah, breath of fresh air. But I'm trying, after the last few, I thought Poch was it. I thought Poch was going to be our Ferguson. I thought he was going to be there for like 15 years. So I'm sort of stopped getting too attached to managers now because you just kind of think, what's the point? Levy's going to shaft them at some point. So,
Yeah, it's no, it's been incredible to see, and particularly, as I said earlier, hearing how negative Spurs fans were this summer. I mean, rightly so as well. It wasn't great looking on from the outside. But Harry Kane's gone. Can you believe how quickly Spurs have moved on, really? Or do you think they might this season still need to go a bit further, and then you'll see like actually could have done with Kane?
You can always do with Harry Kane. I mean, you're not going to be surprised to hear a Spurs fan say, for my money, he's the best striker in the world. Mm-hmm. He plays number 10 like Francesco Totti, and he plays number 9 like Alan Shearer. So every club's going to miss him. But for what the sort of tactics, the high press that Ange Postecoglou wants his team to play, Son's the perfect guy because, in Football Manager, you have the old 20 on work rate. He's rapid. You see defenders and goalies really sort of brick it when they see him charging them down. And he'll do it all day long. He'll run for 90 minutes solid. There's a story about during COVID when South Koreans have to do sort of military service. And he sort of thought, well, look, Premier League spent, I'm going to go do my military service. And he went and did sort of 6 months or 3 months in South Korea. And apparently during all the physical tests, he just obliterated every single person there because he was just so kind of, just such an athlete. So look, yeah, I mean, we're always going to miss watching Harry Kane score. I don't think I'm alone. I think every Spurs fan has probably seen every goal he scored for Bayern Munich. But it's happened before. Dimitar Berbatov left, Luka Modric left, Jack Grealish left.
I've got to first, before I get your score prediction, I've also got to mention the gilet going on here. For those listening online and not watching on YouTube, you're wearing a Tottenham Hotspur gilet, and it's making me think of old Tactics Tim Sherwood himself. Is this in tribute to the man?
No, I was just cold one day and I wanted a gilet. Genuinely, I was at Spurs and I was a bit chilly, but then I did chuckle when I bought it because, you gotta remind yourself of the tough times to enjoy the good times, haven't you? He's one of those other people went after. He didn't really have a chance, to be honest, Tim Sherwood, but he's not going to be the bloke. Certainly, the way he came in, he was never going to be the bloke who was going to be the next Messiah, was he? But yeah, good old Tim.
Got us to an FA Cup final, and we lost 4-0 to Arsenal, but at least we were there. Anyway, look, Ollie, it's been absolutely brilliant to chat to you. Before you go, I've got to get your score prediction for the weekend.
I think it's going to be 2-2 until like the last 10 minutes.
Right.
And one of the high lines is going to crumble.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not going to say against us. I think we're going to win 3-2. There we go.
3-2.
It might even be 4-3. I think it's going to be a basketball game, quite frankly.
It feels like it has the ingredients to be a basketball game for sure. I am going to say that McGinn gets the ball into Watkins and Watkins scores. I'm going to say another Villa player scores. I don't know who, but I think Spurs. We've only drawn one game this season. I'm going to say we draw. I'm going to go 2-2.
I'm going to put money on anything because it's plainly obvious as I'm terrible at putting my money on anything. But I think Brendan Johnson will score. I think Pat Sarr might score, or Pedro Porro. I think they've both just got that ability just to pop up and score. The only thing that's going to disrupt this game, and you probably want to wrap up now, but I'm going to get rid of a bee in my bonnet. The only thing that will disrupt this game is the thing that's disrupting every game in the Premier League at the moment. That's VAR.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fairly convinced it's now causing injuries. You know, I'm pretty sure that Van der Ven pulled up because he spent 7 minutes standing in position waiting for the game to resume. I think it's a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It might be necessary for coaching staff and whoever monitors kind of health at football clubs might be looking at ways that when these long delays are happening, what they can do for the players, like how they have to start jogging around the pitch, start almost like a warm up of some type.
That's a position because like the ref can wave play on at any moment. You know, it's just. But that would be because I think this is going to be a really nice poised game. I think Villa are doing really interesting things. I think they cause trouble to everyone. Spurs are in obviously. Had we not had the game against Chelsea, you know, I'd be more confident. But, you know, there's no hiding it. We've lost some really key players, going back to Perisic and Solomon, who we didn't mention. But, you know, they were crucial at the start of the season. So I think you guys are coming at a really good time. But I'm not going to not back my team other than 20 quid. So, yeah, I'm going to say 3-2 to us. But
okay. I remember a heartbreaking 3-2 a couple of years ago when Son got through in the 94th minute. Bjorn Engels made a mistake. He let the ball go through his leg. And that was at that point as well where when Villa were in the very near relegation season. Game,
we were so bad. But that was that early Conte, I think, or late Jose, I think.
I think it was Jose.
Jose.
I think so.
We were so bad. I mean, it was... You know, we got lucky. You guys handed us a massive free pass with that one. But Sunday's going to be good. The only thing is like the other thing as well is, you know, he wants a Sunday 2:00 kickoff.
Yeah,
most people are thinking about a Sunday roast.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we're getting used to that with Europe this season. So yeah. But Ollie, it's been absolutely brilliant to chat to you, and thanks so much for coming on to All Villa No Filler.
Pleasure. Good luck, sort of this weekend, but not really.